Hello, friends. Today I'm going to ask a few questions from my dismissive avoidant fiance, Matt. Recovering, more secure, dismissive avoidant partner. So some of you might know that I was supposed to be in Mozambique right now, and I had this crazy 48 hours of travel where I went to the Mozambican border. I spent the night there because I had a problem with my visa, just to be sent back home. So after like 30 hours of travel, I am back where I started. And I think this is the best thing because there is a big cyclone that just hit Mozambique. So I hope everybody there is safe. And I truly believe that when things don't work out, if it doesn't flow, let it go. This is what we were saying. And when we get rejected, we get redirected. So here we are, and I thought that we're going to do a fun video with Matt, and he is not really like huge on being on camera, so thank you so much. And I think we all really appreciate this. I think we all would want to get our dismissive avoidant partners to just like sit and give us all the answers of like, what is going on in your head? Why are you doing the things you're doing? So let me know if this works for you. Give Matt some love in the comments because this is really out of his comfort zone. Okay, so we're going to ask some of the juicy questions that I know I've always wanted to know from my dismissive avoidant partner that I didn't always feel comfortable in speaking or asking them. And we have been together now for going on 6 years this year. And it's not always been easy. We've always had a lot of love. This is by far the healthiest relationship we both have been in. However, we experienced a lot of ups and downs before we healed our attachments. And we even broke up before we got to this point of being more secure, settled in our relationship. So I'm going to ask it's about like 20 questions. We'll see how we do with the time, and if it starts to get boring, we're just going to cut it. But the questions are going to get juicier as we go along. All right, so let's go. Okay, so most of us want to know, like, do dismissive avoidants really want to be in relationships? Because they do this thing where it's like 2 steps forward and then 3 steps back, and we get really mixed signals as the anxious preoccupied or the fearful avoidance. How would you address that?
I think we do want to be in a relationship. I think like everyone else, we want to be loved, and I think counterintuitively I might argue that we need love more than anyone else. But love is scary for us and oftentimes painful, and it's this kind of battle between avoiding the pain but also needing the love. So that's where we have these struggles internally of coming forward and back, forward and back.
Yeah, so you kind of feel yourself that you want to go towards a relationship, but all the negative associations from the past come up to the surface, and that's kind of like overpowering you, and then you decide, okay, maybe it's not worth it because inevitably I'm going to get hurt anyway, so let's rather than not try.
Yeah, it's the swing between wanting and needing love and fearing and experiencing pain and rejection, I would say.
And do you think that this is like a conscious thing for most people, or would you say that you didn't know about it until you started to work on your attachment style?
I think the biggest breakthrough for me was understanding my core wounds of abandonment, not being enough. And then because I fear abandonment, because I fear not being enough, I avoid situations that would make me feel those wounds.
So would you say it was like mostly unconscious previously, and then once you started to discover like, oh, this is how the abandonment shows up for me, and then you started to spot that in your life?
Yeah, you start to see the patterns playing out more readily, yeah. definitely.
And I think this is what happens for most people, because a lot of people want to know, is this something that you're doing on purpose, this like push-pull? Are you conscious that you're doing it, or you're not conscious of doing it? So before you do the work, if I get it correctly, that you were not aware that you were doing this thing. It was just like this dance in relationship. And then you started to become conscious when you started doing the work.
Yeah, definitely.
And of course, when you start doing the work, then you try to not do those things anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like you're trying to go out there and hurt people.
No, you never were. We never did want to hurt anyone.
We as the spokesperson as the spokesperson for the dismissive avoidants in the world. All right. So I think we already addressed, why do you pull away? You pull away because you're afraid that you're going to get hurt.
Yeah. It's just a fear of abandonment, a fear of feeling like I'm not enough. Yeah, it's mostly out of fears of hurt and rejection.
Yeah, which is so interesting to people who have the anxious or the fearful avoidant attachment styles, because a lot of the time we believe that the dismissive avoidant has this super high self-esteem, and you can even hear about it on the internet that a lot of dismissive avoidants see themselves in positive light and see others in a negative light. But when you really get to a point that the dismissive avoidant is vulnerable enough, they will also tell you about their fears of not being good enough.
We just become very good at being self-reliant emotionally, and that's what comes across as good self-esteem. It's just self-reliance and independence and fulfilling your needs and your emotional needs and wants, and feelings. And then that becomes across as, he's got a lot of high self-esteem, or he can even experience himself as having a high self-esteem. But I think underneath that there's a certain fragility and a desire for more connection.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, and I think that's, we get different types of dismissive avoidance, and it's also on a spectrum. So, the person who doesn't know anything about their attachment style, the person who is not interested in personal development, might not have the self-awareness that underneath this exterior mask that I have created of being extremely self-sufficient, that there is this vulnerability. It's only later when you notice that the relationships that you're in are failing, and then you start to embark on the healing journey, that then you connect with those aspects of you.
And it only really comes out in relationship, because being single as a DA can be very, I don't want to say easy, but it's much easier to manage your emotions and needs and feelings on your own. But when you're now bringing another person in, I feel like there's a lot of complexity that comes with that, that is very difficult to navigate, especially as someone that's self-reliant on their needs and emotions. Because when you have a partner now who has needs and emotions, and the only reason to be in relationship is to have needs and emotions fulfilled by someone else to a certain extent, not in a, codependent manner, but in a healthy, interdependent manner, then it can become very complex and very difficult to navigate as a DA. So in a sense, being single for a DA is easier, but it's not better, as we've discussed sometimes. Life is easier, but it's not better.
I love that. I love you got such a beautiful way with language. Yeah, it's definitely easier, but it's not better. So my dear anxious, preoccupied, or fearful avoidant watching this, know that you do bring a lot of value into your dismissive avoidant partner's life, or even my securely attached people. But it is difficult when you have learned to be so self-reliant to then let down those shields and get somebody into that space. And I think from what I've seen with us and also my clients, and part of my attachment style, the fearful avoidant, was avoidant as well. So I can really resonate with that part of how sometimes it's easier to be single because when you're single, you don't trigger that attachment system. And then you think, oh, I'm so fine when I'm out of a relationship. It's this relationship that is making me not okay. And then you fault find within the relationship. And then you start to think, you know what, this person, there's something wrong with this person, or we're not compatible, or something like that, where it's actually what's happening. It's triggering all of those deeper attachment wounds that are now coming up to the surface to be healed.
Yeah, definitely. And you may ask, like, well, then what's the point of being in a relationship? But I think being single at that level, there's a lack of depth that you can get into, with somebody else. So yeah, you might be happy, and I don't want to say happy, but what's the word I'm looking for? Content as being single. But like I said, every DA still wants that deeper love, that deeper connection that they're afraid of in the first place. So there's always this feeling like something's missing. So you may be content, but there's always this underlying feeling that something's missing. And then you try to go into a relationship to get that thing fulfilled, and then all of these challenges come up, and then you just want to go back to being single rather than facing the challenges and all the triggers and the core wounds that have led you to become a DA in the first place. Because it only comes out in full force in relationship. For any attachment style.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm going to skip a few of these questions. So I think, as we're going, I just want to know, what are some of your triggers that make you want to pull away?
I think criticism is a big one, feeling criticized. It's not even necessarily criticism, but it's feeling criticized, which is a difference, because you can say something that doesn't seem like criticism to me, but I'm very sensitive to criticism, and it can come across as criticism to me, in which case I want to pull away. Basically anything that connects to those core wounds of abandonment and not feeling enough. And then on conflict is another one, especially volatile conflict. When emotions get heated, things get very, I don't want to say scary, but it makes us want to pull away, because I just don't want those feelings and emotions coming up. And those are probably the feelings and emotions that led us to become DAs in the first place. Like I imagine a lot of DAs went through a lot of volatility as children. I had a parent that was very outwardly expressive of their emotions, which made them feel unsafe. And then when you get into conflict with a partner, you start to feel those same feelings of unsafe. And as a child, you couldn't express those feelings to your parent because it would increase the volatility and emotion. It would make the situation worse. So there's no point in arguing or expressing your needs and emotions in that moment. It's better to just be quiet, shut down, and become invisible to the person that is expressing their emotions towards you as a parent and a child. And now as the same pattern plays out in relationship. So the more you speak in elevated emotion, the more we will likely shut down. And it's not even a conscious thing. It's just like fight, freeze, fawn response. I think we go into freeze very quickly, very easily. And yeah, that comes across as stonewalling or avoidance or a lack of connection, lack of love. But for us, it's just like, I don't know what else to do. It's just everything I do makes it feel worse. So I'm just going to be quiet.
Yeah, okay, there's so much in there. So I think I'm going to address both of those things, and then we're going to round it up for this video. So the first thing is what you said about perceived criticism. So it's not even that I'm necessarily criticizing you, but I say something, even when I use I statements, like, you know what, I would love us to spend more time together. And sometimes I would see that this would trigger you because you would feel what?
Like I'm not enough, like I'm not doing enough.
Yeah, and this was really tough. And I think a lot of people on the internet get very frustrated because they think, oh, I don't want to baby my partner. Like, I'm doing all the right things and I'm using I statements and how. So what could, I can't really remember what we personally did in this situation. Do you remember?
I think it's a two-way street. I mean, obviously communication with partners is extremely important. So when you're dealing with a DA, you can't say you do this, you do that, because that's automatic shutdown. That's taking us straight into freeze mode and a feeling of I'm not enough, I'm never going to be enough, so I might as well leave this relationship. The other side of that is, from the DA's point of view, is to understand that what your partner is saying to you is not personal. It's just a understanding that they have needs and emotions that are not being fulfilled, not because of who you are, just because of the current dynamic in the relationship. And you can now, it's an invitation to fulfill those needs and emotions for your partner, which then builds closeness and love in the relationship. And that's ideally what a good relationship is. It's when two partners are interdependently fulfilling each other's needs and emotions. And then you can see it from when your partner says, oh, I need you to spend more time with me. It's not you saying you're not enough for me. It's you saying, I feel lonely and I would love to have more time with you.
Yeah, and I think...
It's not a victim scenario where I'm being victimized by you. It is an invitation for connection.
Yeah, and I think this is exactly what, this is exactly what I'm trying to show and teach my clients. And also I had to learn as the fearful avoidant is to invite my partner into the connection instead of pushing them away with snarky remarks, because the anxious preoccupied and the fearful avoidance come at the dismissive avoidant a lot of the time with this preconceived idea from their past that, you know what, when I ask for my needs, I am going to get shut down. My person is not going to want to fulfill my needs. So I'm already anticipating that. I used to anticipate that and then go like, oh, but you don't want to fulfill my needs anyway. Or you don't want to spend time with me, or you don't care for me, or you just spend time working. So I would already come at it from this very negative space, and then you would feel shut down and criticized, and then I would be reaffirmed in my belief that, you see, he doesn't care, he doesn't want me, it's true what I'm saying. And this is called self-validation theory. So what I believe, I am going to look for in the world to reaffirm what I already believe. And I've got a complete separate video about this, and it's called something like, why do you keep attracting the same partner? But this is a very good point to show how whatever we believe, whatever our core wounds are, our deepest fears are, we have those beliefs, and then we're going to project it onto our partner. And then we're going to keep getting the result that we're getting. So, and that perpetuates that cycle of me coming at him from the space of my needs are not going to get fulfilled in any way. He shuts down and can't fulfill my needs because he doesn't really understand my own vulnerability. And I think from my perspective, when we talk about like the masculine and the feminine principles as well, I had to really soften, like the relationship really taught me how to soften, how to be more vulnerable. Because I also, even though I felt a great deal of vulnerability, I didn't know how to express that to you in a positive way, right? Because then, sometimes we go from this criticism to then expressing our needs, but in a very sulky way as well. Like, oh, I'm lonely, and but when we approach it a little bit differently to like, oh, you know what, I really enjoy the connection that we have. I would like to spend more time with you. I really missed you. I think that is a lot more inviting. This is what I was talking about. Like, I started to become a lot more inviting. Like, oh, I would really love for us to spend a little bit more time together. When do you have time? Or I've missed you. So already taking care of his core wound of feeling not enough and also feeling inadequate, So giving him like measurable steps of like what we can do for him to understand that this is what we can do to fulfill my needs, like being very specific, right? Is that making sense?
I think if you want to put it into a one-liner, if you want your DA to love you, just encourage them.
Yes, encouragement. Yes, that's exactly what I had to learn, is how to be more encouraging. And that was a really difficult thing for me because I didn't get encouragement when I was growing up. You know, I was just kind of like tough love, you know, like you just ship up or shape out. And what? Shape up or ship out. That's the one. And then I felt really spiteful and angry because now I had to give him what I never received. But in that journey, I started to be more encouraging to myself, to other people in my life, to even things like my yoga teacher trainees, you know. So I think that the thing that we have the biggest resistance to, like for the fearful avoidant and the anxious preoccupied, like when we say, you know, we have to baby our DA, it's just an indication that you didn't get that nurturing. You didn't receive that gentle, feminine, nurturing and loving and encouragement that you needed. And that cup is then empty. So now when you're trying to pour from an empty cup, it just creates resentment because I'm trying to give him something that I didn't get. So I started to fill that up for myself internally, nourish myself, and then start pouring from that to him. And then it was better. All right. So what did you point at?
Time.
The time. Okay. One more thing. The conflict